Welcome everybody to today's video, which is another one from CGP Grey, and it's called The Trouble with Tumbleweed. So looking forward what it's about. We go right in.
Bouncing across a scene, Tumbleweed established the Wild West as Western. But more than just props, Tumbleweed are real, and Tumbleweed are alive. Well, they were alive. Each Tumbleweed starts as a tiny seed on the craggy landscape, putting down roots, up branches, opening flowers, and through the miracle of life, birthing seeds, itty-bitty baby tumbles to be. Now, dropping these seeds straight down won't give the Tumble Tots their best head start.
Like, this is the first thing totally, surprising me, really. I thought Tumbleweed, is made by, you have a stick or something, like straw or something, and it's floating around, and it's catching more and more stuff, sticking to it, and you get bigger and bigger Tumbleweed. But now they're like, Tumbleweed is like an actual plant. Did you know this? This blows my mind, actually.
So what's a parent plant to do but sacrifice their life for their children? To intentionally starve themselves, to die and to dry, to catch the wind, to shuffle off this mortal coil, to bounce across the land, to chance their children to find fertile ground, to root, to sprout, to grow, to flower, to continue the circle of life. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the circle
These
of
humble
life.
tumble
With
rolling
tumbleweed
across
and people,
the west
right?
in search of empty land to colonize are as iconically West as Westerners westerning, because neither are natives. Before the 1800s, there were no homesteaders and no tumbleweed in the West. Tumbleweed are an invasive species and a deeply unwelcome one. It's time to get real about the trouble with tumbles. Now, you might be thinking,
Crazy. Like, this this is why I love his videos. Like, it always blows your mind. So tumbleweed is an invasive species, and it's actually like a huge deal. And it's a plant in the first place. It's not even just that straw in the wind. Well, and that's just after 1 minute. I think this video is gonna be amazing. I have a good feeling about this.
if the West is mostly empty and tumbleweed arrived and survived, what's the big deal? They're kind of nice. And you know what? You're right. Kind of. Tumbles are like snow. A little is charming, but a lot is a problem, and a lot dangerous. Tumbleweed stick to things and each other. One stuck tumble becomes 2, 10, a tumulus. The American interior has vast swaths of land, and after a tumble terrain takeover, one big windstorm can drown a village under thousands of the things, with people quickly finding their roads and vehicles and even homes inaccessible. If you've never seen tumbles on the move or the aftermath of that,
This is like an attack of fluffy balls or like fluffy Kirby's attacking your village.
it's unreal. And though a tumble drift looks like a brown snowdrift, this snow is full of thorns. If you're thinking of a rose, think again. On tumbles, it's all thorns. Brittle to break off in your skin or horse skin where it can fester. Clearing tumbleweed isn't just painful, but also infuriating. A tumbleweed drift is both bouncy and sticky. You're going to have to fork them one at a time. Tedious at best, Sisyphusian at worst. You might want to use industrial equipment, but be careful, tumbleweed are shockingly flammable. Dry and airy but still branch dense, they are min-maxed kindling. A tumbleweed will go up in flames way fast and burns way hot. More on that later. But even if you manage to clear the town and all the open land around the town, a single missed seed contains the next tumble torrent. For while many plants use flowers to attract bees to cross-pollinate and reproduce, not tumbles. Their flowers have nothing for bees. Instead,
Yeah, that's a crazy evolutionary tactic to survive, right? Like, you just tumble around and pretty much it's your corpse flying around and spreading like stuff. Like if tumbleweed was a person, it would be like this zombie tumbleweed flying around. Yeah, infecting everything.
Floating pollen directly into the wind, hope you don't have allergies, to cross-pollinate. And tumbles don't need two to tango. A lone tumbleweed can pollinate itself. So that single missed seed will grow up to be a tumbling weed containing tens of thousands of seeds, hundreds of thousands if it gets large enough. A single tumble tumbling to town one year leaves a tumble trail the next and an exponential explosion thereafter. And then there's the danger to agriculture, which brings us to the
I want to have this kind of styling, this kind of graphics as a video game. Can you imagine like his way to design it in like a Harvest Moon video game or uh, like Animal Friends video game or something like that? I could totally imagine that. Would look super cute indie game.
The start of this, a time before tumbleweed in America and a time before homesteading. It's the 1800s and the start of Westerners westerning, building their first farms and tiny towns. Growing enough food to feed the adolescent nation was vital. Nearly everyone's job had to be farming, and the newly created Department of Agriculture had the job of writing pro tips on how best to do that, along with collecting seeds and samples from the new continent, which is how all was normal until one day a letter arrived for DOA. Hey, there's this a tumbling weed giving us some trouble. Can you come take a gander? And so she did, arriving to find South Dakota in bad shape, a weedy infection rapidly developing, damaging the food supply. These new weeds stole ground nutrients for themselves before crops could even be planted, or they would grow in between crops, choking them out. During harvest, they hurt the draft animals and clogged or broke the newly mechanized farm equipment. Early estimates were crop losses of 20% because of the tumbles. DOA tried to constrain the situation using education. Wanted, tumbleweed, kill on sight, aka prickly thistle, aka Kali Tragus, aka the wind witch, aka the Russian thistle. This, by the way, is the motherland where the species is native, and from where crop seed contaminated with tumbleseed probably came, to arrive in South Dakota on perhaps a
It gets more and more crazy. So Tumbleweed is actually Russian. Oh my god. Yeah. But that's why I love his videos so much, because he takes something so normal, everyday thing. Not that I've ever seen Tumbleweed in my life, but like normal pop cultural thing. And it's like a huge backstory behind it. So whenever in a small talk conversation, somebody comes up with Tumbleweed, and you want to be that fun at parties guy, now you have something to tell.
single farm to start the infection, which grew worse by the year, and the Department of Agriculture's efforts to stop it were futile.
Yeah, like you're attending a party, and like a Western party, and somebody puts a piece of tumbleweed like in the corner, and then you starting like a critical argumentation about how dangerous tumbleweed is and how it's an invasive species, and all the girls at the party will be like, "Oh my god!" So you can do that now with like tumbleweed knowledge, which you have because of him and because of me.
Way too much land, far too few people. Worse, this new land was Tumbletopia, and still is. See this round of rectangle states? It's the Great Plains, abutting the Great American Desert. An enormous stretch of land, flat, open, windy. South Dakota's neighbors had no chance, nor neighbors' neighbors. From patient zero, boom. By the turn of the century, the tumbleweed infection covered the interior, eventually spreading north to Canada and south down to Mexico. America's mountains were a barrier for a while until tumbleweed hitched a ride on the trains that had freshly connected the continent, jaunting over the mountains west and east to establish themselves in every spared pocket of empty land. Oh dear. But it gets better. Back to fires, specifically prairie fires. A nice big field of dry wheat is just begging to burst into flames. The only early tech to stop fires was to build fire breaks, physically stopping the flames with neat, straight, vitally empty stretches of land the fire could not cross. But more perfect tunnels for tumbles you could not make. Even if the fire breaks were kept clear, fire makes its own wind, sucking in cold air from ground level to blow out hot, up and over.
And you have like a flying fireball. Imagine like a burning tumbleweed is like a Super Mario fireball, pretty much, right? So that can be pretty scary, like a flying piece of fire wheel flying in your direction. I would imagine that can be pretty dystopian, like an army of burning tumbleweed. So yeah, if they're not burning, if they're in their natural state, I think they're actually quite cute.
thus transforming tumbles into fireballs to breach the break. So started the first volley in the war on tumbleweed. But for the Department of Agriculture to eradicate the infection from the interior farmland and towns where they did the most damage would mean not only catching every weed and seed across a third of a continent with the cooperation of 2 annoyed international neighbors, but also finding every patch of infection across the mountains in the other 2/3. An impossible task. So, that's why tumbleweed are still here and have been around for so long and in such numbers, people forget there was ever a before time. But not the United States Department of Agriculture, from the 1800s to 1900s to 2000s, still trying to rid America of the weed, but so far without success. And that is the trouble with tumbles.
All right. So I guess the fight against tumbleweed goes on, probably for another few 100 years. And if you have any ideas how to get rid of this epidemic, let me know in the comments. And thanks for joining me today. See you next time.